I want to talk with you tonight about the one thing that changes everything, the thing that can take hopelessness and transform it into extraordinary achievement. But first, I need to give you a bit of a backstory. When I was 16, my world, my home, erupted in violence. My grandmother had discovered that she had cancer, and within a matter of weeks, she died. That sent two of my family members spiraling downward from grief to rage. And it got so bad to the point where one of them actually threatened to kill me. Now, I'm autistic. I'm diagnosed autistic, and the problem with autism diagnosis is that for decades, the experts have been looking at it only through a male lens. And autism in women actually presents quite differently. So I didn't know I was autistic. I was one of the ones that was missed. The reason why this is relevant is because one of the principal characteristics of autism is really a social communication disorder. You can't read people's faces. You don't necessarily know what people are thinking. Sometimes you have a really hard time making friends. You step all over people's words. It's fabulous. Great at one of the cocktail parties here. And so when you think about that in the context of violence, though, it's like a blind spot. So you don't see the train coming until you get hit by it. So my life was like a constant switching, right? Normal, 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 run for your life. And I became your typical runaway. I ran away from home when everything's got bad, and then I'd run right back when everything's got bad out there. Anyone who's couch surfed knows that you run out of friends really quick. And I didn't have a lot to begin with in the first place. So, then you have to make new friends, and then you don't have time to vet them, and then you're behind their locked door. So I lost my virginity to rape as a result of couch surfing. And that abuse continued for over a year because sometimes it felt safer to be there than it felt to be at my house. So better to give up your body than to give up your life. By the time I ended up in a women's shelter, I was really broken down. It was easy to believe that my life wouldn't end up into anything because nobody ever came back to my shelter to say, look where I am now, I'm successful, I'm a doctor, I'm a lawyer, I'm an astrophysicist, I'm a garbage collector. It didn't really matter. What mattered is I needed somebody to tell me I've been able to get to the life that I want, that homelessness isn't a dead end. But the only people who ever came back were the ones who still needed help. They were still struggling. So for a time, the only question in my mind was, do I live or do I die? Because what's the point of living if your life is going to be a life of constant struggle, right? And because, I had been one of the invisible homeless. When you're sleeping on a couch, sleeping on the street, sleeping in your car, you're one of the unseen. And so if I was going to come back with a story, I needed a story that would reach the people who had fallen through the cracks. And so how do you do that? You do it through word of mouth. The best way to get word of mouth is to make a story that the media will pay attention to, right? And so because I was homeless, I had dropped out of high school. So the decision to be able to make that success story, I couldn't be a doctor, a lawyer, or an astrophysicist. I just had to make money. And it took me almost 10 years to get back to my starting line. But then one day, I ran into some guy who had made $900,000 selling software, and I thought, okay, that's where I got to go. That's where my story is, right? And, it was insane because I didn't know how I would get there, but I just applied for every single job that I could, and all of them said BA required, MBA preferred, and I had this grade 10 math education. Autism really sucks in a lot of ways, but in this particular case, it really benefited me. Because if you think about self-doubt is constructed from the social pressure to fit in. And if you can't read the way people are thinking, then it doesn't occur to you to be embarrassed, and therefore, it doesn't occur to you to doubt yourself, right? And on top of it, I had no idea that these people were actually quietly and politely trying to tell me to go jump in a lake, so I just kept calling. I was like, hey, how about that job? And, eventually, I must have worn someone down because somebody took a chance on me. And then I just worked insane hours because I was always driven by that promise, And also the waiting. Every year I would ask myself, am I successful enough? Am I successful enough? Am I successful enough? Because I was so afraid that if I came out too early and the media didn't think it was an interesting enough story, I'd be yesterday's news, and then my entire life's focus would be gone, just over, right? My last corporate job, I was regional head of financial services for the Americas for a small division within a billion-dollar technology firm called Tibco. And while I was climbing that corporate ladder, it was insane because I was living on $1 a day in a shelter, and I went to earning $270,000 in a year, and I still didn't know if I was successful enough. But that was when my company decided to buy a coach for me. And I didn't even know what coaches were, but I found out at $500 an hour. And all I could think was, geez, I could have used this years ago. You know? It just seemed so unfair that the people who needed the help the most were the people who would never be able to afford it. So, and if you think about the violence against women sector, the poverty reduction sector, everybody is strapped for cash. And so what are we doing? We're having meetings in community center basements. We have big classrooms where, you know, you basically work with the lowest common denominator. It's very general services where you can have unlimited resume writing workshops, or if you do get placed into a job, the probability is that you're going to be back on the bottom rung. And when we're looking at violence, you know, these are women who sometimes have long careers and educations, and yet they're put back to the bottom rung, and there's nothing there to be able to help people to get back to where they belong. So I thought, we've got to figure something out. And what if I could convince these certified coaches to each commit to serving one woman for a year, right? We could do an enormous amount that way. And so it became like the Wella Balsam commercial. Do you guys remember the Wella Balsam commercial? Please tell me you do. You know, I go into the grocery store and I'm like, you got it, Pontiac, or I say Wella Balsam, and they're like, what? Hashtag YOLO. And I'm like, oh, God. So thank you for remembering. Anyway. So it became like the Wella Balsam commercial. I told one coach, and she told two friends, and so on and so on. And eventually, we had a group of 10 coaches. And we started, and we had immediate success. It was just incredible. This most recent year, we had an independent evaluator measure our results compared to a group of waitlisted women who didn't participate in the program that year. And what they found was that the waitlisted women, the people who didn't participate, had zero change in their income. Yet our graduates, most of our graduates had a positive change in income, and it averaged about $12,000. Some were going as high as $28,000. And this is on top of social assistance. So we're talking about the people who were changing by $28,000 were actually experiencing new income of $40,000, right? Because they're getting off of welfare and they're getting a decent job. And the reason why we've been able to be this successful, I think, is really threefold. First of all, the quality of services that we're able to deliver. Right? Certified coaches, all working from the same proven methodology. There's a consistency of service there. There's a high value of service there. We get all of our assessment tools are free. We have a career development portal that we get for free. And so, you know, the clients are getting about $12,000 worth of service at no cost to them. We're going to be delivering this year about $1 million worth of service at a $250,000 cost. You could never do that if you couldn't get the pro bono services in there, right? So, it shouldn't be a surprise at all that one of the other things that makes it really successful is that all of our staff have lived experience. It makes a big difference when you can say, I know you can get here because I was here too. And then the third reason is really the magic sauce. This is the thing I've come to talk to you about. Because every woman who comes into this program comes in never wanting to see another woman go through what she went through. And within that is the ember that I want to turn into a bonfire. And so we tell our clients, this isn't just about being able to make your life better for yourself and your family. It's also about being able to make your life into that story that can inspire somebody else to have it too. And the women who embrace that, their progress skyrockets. And it shouldn't be a surprise. Like, what happens when we make our goals bigger than ourselves? Our ego takes a back seat. And then all of a sudden, it's no longer about us, it's about our mission. And so any rejection is no longer personal. Any disappointment is no longer personal. And so in a way, you become unstoppable. And the research bears this out. When we commit ourselves to a cause that we believe in, it can reduce our mortality more than if we exercised 4 times a week. And the story behind that really explains it. Because conducting our lives with purpose and meaning has been found to increase resilience, reduce anxiety and depression, and increase an overall sense of vitality. The rewards that come from that set off a chain reaction that heightens alertness, drive, focus, and optimal learning. It feels superhuman, but it's really that we become fully human. We filled those saggy tires and we're amazed at how fast the car drives. We were born to take care of each other. So I want to leave you with some ideas that we can all use to be able to inspire the people we love, the people we work with, to be able to find their own genius. First, if you want people to connect to and be guided by their purpose, we need to first commit to a purpose-driven life. And if you don't feel like you're there yet, try this exercise. Take a pen and paper, and then off the top of your head, without even thinking, just write the top 3 values right away. And then dig into your life and align every single thing you do to those values. And I'm not talking about changing your life. What I'm talking about is digging in and learning just how much you're already aligned to those values. You may surprise yourself. You know, when I was still in the technology sector, the more I became known for the work I was doing in the community, the less people wanted to hire me for a job. They just couldn't believe that I would want to still stay in technology after all that. And so all the HR people would always say the same thing. They'd say, oh, you know, I'm so inspired, and I always thought if I could save enough money, then I would quit my job and I'd finally do something good in the world. But what is the nature of economy? Economy is all about the fulfillment of needs. So unless you're a sex trafficker or a grifter, everything we do for a paycheck is advancing life. Second, have the courage to be fully and transparently human and make it a safe place for others to express their humanity as well. You know, we have this obsession in our world of always looking like we're gliding through life when none of us are. This is why people suffer alone. So if we want to change that, we need to pop open that girdle and let our humanity burst out, lumps and all, right? Third, make it safe to fail. In so many companies, you're not allowed to fail. And when I was on the Today Show, this time I was doing a high-heeled truck pull. I was pulling a 15,000-pound truck. And NBC insisted on doing it on Rockefeller Plaza, which was uphill. So I knew that there was a high probability that I was going to fail. But I wasn't there to pull the truck. I was there to make people think about homelessness. On the side of the truck, it said 80% of adults in homeless families are women. And on top of it, I also insisted that there be a charitable component to this. So they made the entire Guinness World Records week have charitable aspects to each session. And so despite the fact that I failed epically and swore accidentally on live TV, Walmart still paid $25,000, gave $25,000 to a local women's shelter, right? Yeah, that's something to be proud of. And when I went into that shelter to talk with those women, they were far more interested in my story of failure than they ever would have been in my story of success, because success isn't an absence of failure, it's how we manage the failure as we move forward. So make it safe to fail, encourage it even if you can, because we will always learn more from our failures than we will from our successes. Fourth, assume nothing. Just because we speak the same language doesn't mean we understand each other. You know, think about cultural differences, right? This means yes, and this means yes, and in some Balkan countries, this means yes. So look people in the eyes, take that time, and be prepared to encounter entirely different worlds and meet people where they are. There's nothing that stifles talent more than misunderstanding. And fifth, celebrate every step forward, every moment of authenticity, and encourage others to do the same. Thank you.
Outstanding, that was, thank you, wow. What a role model.
Thank you. Oh my God. Oh no. Guys, I'm gonna cry again. I'm not wearing waterproof mascara. Oh boy.
So inspirational. Now, here's the thing. You know, you're doing Up with Women in Toronto, and you can tell from this response that, you know, what you do is so customized. Is it scalable?
Oh my
Can
God.
we do it other places?
It's totally scalable because, you know, right now we've gone from in 1 year, we went from 1 to 6 regions across Ontario. And we're now planning to expand across Canada, but we're also getting requests to expand to the UK and to the US. It's highly scalable because what we're doing is we're engaging certified coaches where they are. So we're actually engaging the private sector to serve their own community. So yeah, we've got the methodology. We can make it work. give us a call.
And I love the fact that you use, you give us your own experience in terms of coaching and to bring that into what you do.
Yeah.
But now here's another thing. Step out here for a minute.
Don't look at my thighs,
Look
please.
at these thighs, okay? I was a bodybuilder, so I can appreciate this. And I know that you hold a number of Guinness Records.
Yeah.
And the thing about it is now, how does that tie in with the work that you do?
Well, I mean, that was all an accident, to be honest. I mean, okay, so it's not an accident to go and pull trucks around, but, you know, thank goodness my skill isn't squirting milk out of my eye or eating a whole bottle of ketchup in 3 seconds, because that's really what the Guinness World Records is, right? But at least my skill translates to survivors, that we're stronger than we think we are. And that makes a big difference. When you're pulling a plane, and I pull planes, you know, you're this little person, you look like an action figure, right, against this gigantic plane. And think about survivors of violence. What do they feel like when they're being attacked? They feel like that little person against that gigantic monster, right? And to see that pulling, it transforms things. So do you want to see what it looks like?
Yes.
To pull a plane?
Pulling a plane?
Pulling a plane.
Yes, I do.
All right, can we put it on video? There we go, that's a 35,000-pound jet. Woo! All right, you can see how hard it is at first, but that's the whole thing. You got to get the momentum, and there we go. Now we're moving. Oh my God, I feel like a sportscaster. Yeah. Right? Right? Okay, ladies, I just have to say, we got hips, baby. We got hips. So that's power.
And like you said, you know, seeing that happen, you know, this is a situation where you are a woman, hear me roar.
Woo!
Thank you, Leah. Thank you.
Give me a hug.